Hello and welcome to our presentation today on the Clark County Landlord Assistance Program. My name is Susie Vasquez, the Executive Director of the Nevada State Apartment Association, and I will be quickly going through and providing an overview of the information currently available regarding the program. Clark County, again, created a CARES Housing Assistance Program, which will reimburse landlords for lost rent revenue, which is rent and assessed late fees due to COVID-19 between the dates of March 1st, 2020 and December 30th, 2020. Clark County reserves the right to limit the number of units funded based on the availability. Before we proceed, I do need to give you a legal disclaimer. I am not an attorney. I only play one on television. So please do not take anything in this presentation as legal advice. If you have any questions as far as legality is concerned, please refer those questions to your legal counsel. If you do not have a legal counsel, you can direct those questions to me, director@nvsaa.org. I will then forward those to our legal counsel for further direction. To be eligible for the program, a landlord needs to have property located in Clark County, Nevada. The landlord owns the property as of the date of the application. The property is residential. Mixed-use properties will be eligible for residential leases only. The landlord is not a government entity or public housing authority. The landlord has not received any COVID-19 relief funds in the form of a grant or forgivable loan. The landlord has not received any other funding for the same expenses from other resources. And the landlord has written confirmation that tenants have had difficulty making rent payments as a result of COVID-19. Eligible landlords are individuals or sole proprietors, corporations or LLCs, partnerships, and nonprofits. We're going to go ahead and start the application step by step and review that so everyone understands what is going to be required and needed in order to submit an application. First, you'll go to the portal. Again, that portal will go live on Monday, December 7th at some point in time. I'm not quite sure when, but the goal is to make that portal live no later than Monday. The landlord fills out the application and the following documentation is required before the application is processed. We do have to provide ownership documentation, so either a copy of the deed, a copy of a mortgage statement, or your certificate of insurance for this year for the property. Lease agreements for the residents that you are applying for on behalf of have to be provided. Delinquency notices, also one per unit, has to be provided. A delinquency notice can be either the 7-day notice to pay or quit, or some delinquency notice that you've provided to your resident that has an itemization of what is currently past due. Or you can provide also a tenant ledger that shows what is past due. With that tenant ledger, again, I would probably provide the 7-day notice so they can see what is past due at a glance. Again, if you are going to be submitting one application for multiple residents, you will need to provide a spreadsheet to summarize what's in that packet. And we'll go further into detail here in just a moment. The ownership documentation, you also have to be aware that you will have to submit a W-9 as part of the application process. So each W-9, most properties only have one. So if you have one W-9, you can submit one application for all of the residents that are past due on your property. If your property has multiple W-9s, then you would have to submit an application package for each W-9. If you have multiple properties that fall under one W-9, then all of those properties can be submitted in one package because it falls under the one W-9. And as we get through the application here, you'll see that you have space where you can put multiple properties within that one W-9. They have accommodated the application form for that. You do have to provide COVID-19 confirmation. Written confirmation will be provided as part of the application. So you'll be certifying that the tenant has been impacted, and that is because you have documentation in their file that proves that impact. We'll go a little further into detail on that and how you can obtain that here in just a moment. Again, the first page of the landlord application is fairly basic. It's just landlord information. Again, you have multiple lines to put in multiple properties if they all fall under the same W-9. If you only have one W-9, then you put one property in there. The second page is for the leaseholder information. Again, if you're going to be submitting the application for multiple residents, you can just put the property name at the top, the street address, the city zip, and then under the unit number, put C attached. So then they know that there's a spreadsheet that's attached to the application that summarizes or actually itemizes each individual resident on it. And then as part of that spreadsheet, you can also add a column for the tenant notice, which we'll go through here in just a moment. Whether or not it was provided, the answer has to be yes, because you have to provide that. Other documents that should have their own column is lease agreement, yes or no, delinquency notice, yes or no, and then the COVID confirmation. And that's basically that you do have some form of documentation that you can certify and confirm that they have been impacted. And then columns for the breakdown of itemized past due rent. So a column for rent, a column for late fees. If you want to add additional columns for other recurring fees, you can. But again, the other fees will probably not be approved for assistance, but you can note them so then they can reconcile along with the tenant ledger on what's past due. But it's fairly simple, fairly straightforward. Step 3 is the landlord provides a tenant notice to all tenants included on the application. There is a sample in the application package, but you're essentially notifying the tenant that you are applying on their behalf for rent assistance, that you are providing the county with their name, their address, their phone number, and their email, so they're able to contact them once the application is approved to inform them that the application has been approved. And then you'll also have a column on the spreadsheet or check the box yes that you did provide this tenant notification. So here is actually an example of a tenant notice. Again, it's just simply informing the tenant that you are applying for rent assistance on their behalf. They will be contacted, and there is a waiver for eviction for 60 days if their rent assistance is approved. So as part of the agreement that you'll be signing once the application is approved is that you'll be waiving the ability to evict for 60 days for non-payment of rent. The second example is the COVID-19 confirmation. Again, I would recommend that you create one letter to the resident, include both of these sections to the resident, so then they're able to circle or check off what applies to them as to a reason why how they were impacted. I would have the residents return this to you just to add one more piece of documentation in their file that they were impacted by COVID. Again, you don't have to provide this confirmation or any proof of impact, but you do have to have this in your files for potential audits in the future. Once you gather all the information, again, the first page is your landlord information. The second page is your tenant information. If you're going to be applying for multiple tenants, then you would just attach a spreadsheet that itemizes all of the items that you have to check off on the application, make a column for each one, and then submit that. Again, we're trying to make this as easy as possible so we can expedite these payments. They only have until December 30th to cut checks. They will not be able to cut any checks beyond that point or spend any of the CARES money that is granted for rent assistance beyond December 30th. So this is the primary reason why they're reaching out to landlords to try to get as much money out there as they possibly can. The last I heard, I believe there is $20 million available for rent assistance that they're just not going to be able to get through using the current process that they're using to process applications. So they're reaching out to us to hopefully expedite as much funding as possible. So you'll gather all of that information and you will email it to chaplandlords@clarkcountynv.gov. That email address, again, will not be active until the portal is live. Once the portal is live, the email will be active. If you send an email to them right now, it'll be returned to you undeliverable. So don't try to get ahead of it. You'll have to wait until the portal is live to submit your applications. The application is then reviewed by Clark County. Then the landlord will receive a determination letter. In that determination letter, I'm assuming it will be either you're approved or you're denied. I'm hoping that if it is approved, that they give you an amount and not necessarily itemize what's being paid out, but I'm hoping that the amount that you submit on the spreadsheet, if you're submitting for multiple residents, is the same amount that they're going to be issuing assistance for. If not, there should be contact information, or you can reach out to chaplandlords@clarkcountynv.gov for further clarification as to what you're being paid. But again, you should only anticipate being paid for rent and late fees. Clark County will then notify the tenant that the landlord received back rent on their behalf. The landlord will receive a landlord assistance program agreement. It is a lengthy agreement. It is full of lots of legal mumbo jumbo, and it needs to be reviewed by an attorney or have someone just go through it section by section and make sure that you understand every single section of that agreement. Again, there is a waiver of eviction for 60 days once payment is received. That's when the clock starts ticking, is once you have that payment in hand, the 60 days to no longer be able to evict for non-payment is in place. You'll sign that agreement. Again, if you're an agent for owner, you can sign it. However, please reach out to your supervisor or your owner and make sure you know who is going to be allowed to sign that agreement on behalf of the owner. And then once it is signed, you'll return that to the county, and the county will then sign it, fully execute it, send you a copy, and then mail a check. Obviously, we're going to anticipate some kind of delay in cutting checks. However, I can tell you that checks need to be cut by December 30th. So we're looking at probably maybe a week after for mail to be able to have those checks in hand for rent assistance. Clark County will not be verifying tenant information. Future audits are possible, so please make sure that you have all of your documentation set aside should the county request an audit. I would recommend that you create a separate folder for all of the documentation that you provided to the county, plus the proof that would be needed to make the audit possible. Obviously, having all of that information together in one place versus having to pull however many files you need and opening those up, it would just cause a mess. So please put all of the information all together in one convenient location for future auditing purposes. The intent is for landlords to collect the information confirming tenant was impacted by COVID and get the money out as quickly as possible to avoid evictions and to help landlords. Proof does not need to be submitted. However, you must retain that proof in their files for potential future audits. Sorry I keep reiterating that, but it's just super important that you have that proof. Can multiple names and units be included on one application? Yes, of course. I did create a sample spreadsheet. Again, you can revise it to fit your needs, but essentially it's the leaseholder's name, the street address, the unit, the email address, the tenant. If there's no email address, then obviously put a phone number in there, just some way that the leaseholder can be contacted by Clark County. Whether or not you provided the tenant notice, which is going to be a Y for yes. The lease agreement is attached, and here in the next slide, I believe I do give you some great news. which is the county did agree to have one lease agreement, like one full lease agreement provided on the first resident, and then any other residents that are part of that application packet, you can provide the first page, which typically has the leaseholder's information and then their rent information, and then the signature page. So if your lease agreement has, you know, the leaseholder information and the rent information on the first page, and then the signatures on the last page, those are the 2 pages that you would need to submit. So again, you submit one full lease packet for the first person. All subsequent residents, you only have to put in the first page and the signature page. So you're able to prove that this is the leaseholder, this is their rent amount, and then sign the lease agreement. Delinquency notice, again, tenant ledger, 7-day, any type of delinquency notice that has an itemization of what is due would be great. COVID confirmation is on file. Again, don't have to provide it, but put yes that you have confirmed and you certified that they were impacted. And then I added a column to let them know whether or not the tenant applied for rent assistance in the past. That way the caseworker knows whether there's a pending application or application in their system that they'll need to pull, because that one's already being taken care of. Total rent amount that's past due, the total late fees that are past due, and then a note column where you can provide any relevant notes which will assist the expediting of the application. So pretty simple, pretty easy. Make it as easy as possible, please. A question that I was asked was, does this apply only to unincorporated Clark County, or is it the cities as well? And it's all of Clark County, including Henderson, Las Vegas, and North Las Vegas. So that was a very good question. But we did get clarification late on Friday for that. Another question that was pending from previous Zoom webinars was, do we submit only those who we know have applied for assistance? You can apply for all residents who you can prove were impacted. There's a column on the spreadsheet that I provided which notes whether they applied for assistance prior or not. Again, there are instances where residents were impacted. We know we have proof in their file that they were impacted, and they just refuse to apply for rent assistance. You can apply for them on their behalf as long as they're okay with it and they don't come screaming to the office to tell you that they don't want you to. But please, 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 originally, we were recommending that you only apply for assistance for those that have applied for assistance on their own, because we wanted to be able to provide that proof of impact. We have opened it up to applying for anybody that we can prove was impacted, but just make sure that you are not picking and choosing residents when you are submitting the application. You apply the same criteria to everybody, and everybody that qualifies under that criteria would then be applied for assistance, right? Just make sure that you are, again, because of fair housing, and that really pretty much controls every single thing we do in operations. Make sure that you take fair housing into consideration, because what you do for one, you have to do for all. So keep that in mind. Payment may be made for up to 10 months. So again, March through December 30th is when you can apply for assistance. No payments for rent shortages past January 1. So again, we're only talking about through December 30th at this point. The Landlord Assistance Portal will be available on Monday, December 7th. There is the address. Once the portal is live, again, the email address for status updates, and then also to submit the paperwork will be live as well. We all know that they're going to be inundated with applications. It is going to be a mess because there's just going to be so much coming in and so many things are going to be moving. So just please be patient. They're doing the best they can to get through all of these with all the best intentions, so please be patient. A couple of questions from the 2 webinars that we've already had I've included, just so hopefully I'm able to answer many, many questions that are out there. But again, the portal goes live sometime on Monday. Once we are made aware, once we know that the portal is live, we'll send out an email blast as well as update our Facebook page that it is ready to go, and you guys can go ahead and just start applying away. So if the eviction has been filed, can we submit an application? If the resident was impacted, you can, and you have proof of that impact, but the resident again refused to apply, you can apply and alert the court of their pending application. I would move forward with that. If resident already received assistance but are delinquent for November, December, can we apply? They should have reached out to their caseworker. Again, they may not have an answer yet because caseworkers are so busy right now. But you can actually submit it, note it on the application, on that notes column or somewhere on the application that the resident had applied before, had already received assistance, but continues to have challenges in paying their rent. So please make sure that you just are as transparent and as possible on those rental applications so they can move as quickly as they can through them. They don't have to call you. There's no telephone tag happening. Just make it as easy as possible. What if the resident has not provided proof of impact? Well, you have to be able to provide some proof. You don't have to submit it, but you're going to have some proof in their file. If there is no proof, then you aren't able to certify that they were impacted, and unfortunately, you would not be able to apply for them for rent assistance. Can we sign the agreement as agent for owner? Please communicate with your supervisor or owner to determine who will be signing that agreement. If the resident skips or moves out and still owes rent, can we apply? No, they're no longer your resident. That lease was terminated. So it is a collection issue. There was another question that someone had passed away. Again, that lease, if you have possession of that unit, it's no longer an assistance issue. It's a collections issue. Now, there was an instance where the one resident had passed, or the leaseholder had passed on, but there was another person in the unit, and they were in the process of, getting that application approved. Obviously, in that instance, submit it, make a note of what the situation is, so then the caseworker knows that and can make the determination with that information. Is a CDC declaration proof of impact? No. The CDC declaration only provides the resident with a legal defense in court. So the resident returning the required notice that you send them, the tenant notice, which notes the impact, would be sufficient along with any other documentation you have in the file from previous conversations. Again, the CDC declaration is really them just saying that they are under penalty of perjury, were impacted, but if you have nothing in the file to prove that, I, as a landlord, would not certify that I have proof that they were impacted. So again, the CDC declaration is only a legal defense that they can provide in a court of law when they appear before a judge and can further explain how they were impacted. So no, the form itself is not proof of impact. The resident received assistance but was not the full amount. Can we apply again? Noted on the application, but keep in mind the goal is to retain as many residents as possible given limited funding. So monthly fees will, some of the monthly fees will remain the resident's responsibility to pay. They're probably only going to be paying for rent and late fees. Anything above and beyond that, you'll have to make a payment arrangement with the resident. What if a resident remains unresponsive? If you're unable to prove that they were impacted and therefore are unable to provide assistance, you can move forward with that eviction. I know that there are still residents out there that continue to be unresponsive or ghosting you, and it leaves us with no other option but to move forward with eviction. They'll probably be the first ones to check the mediation box, and then you'll have to go to mediation. But again, we're trying to also limit that. So by submitting the application for your residents and getting that rent assistance, it really, really is limiting the need for mediation, which is great. And it's also there to help those people that, have been filed on, they did qualify with the CDC declaration, and the eviction was approved, but there was a stay until 1/1. I mean, if you have proof that those people were impacted, you can go ahead and move forward and apply. But again, let the courts know that you've applied for assistance. That was the purpose of mediation, was to provide checks for people to avoid eviction. It just didn't work out that way. So just know that we're trying the best we can. And this is just another level of getting money to the landlords that's available in preventing eviction. If we have payment plans in place, can we still apply? Yep. Yeah. So if you have a payment plan, again, they're probably only going to pay for rent and late fees. So you'll have to revise your payment plan to handle any other monthly fees that remain. Those will be the resident's responsibility. And that's the gist of what questions I had asked over the last couple of webinars. We have 2 more webinars if you want to sit in on those. There's 2 more on Monday. Those you can reach out to my office director at nvsaa.org to get a link to those Zoom webinars. Again, if you have any questions, my email director@nvsaa.org. I can send you the application packet, the draft version, because it hasn't been finalized. And then the agreement, a sample of it, because again, it hasn't been finalized. And then any other resources, the spreadsheet I have an FAQ that's 3 pages long, but essentially the kind of the same question asked over and over, just in different situations. So if you need anything, reach out to our office. Our phone number is 702-436-7662. You can reach me via email. I thank you so much for sitting in with me on this, and I hope that it's helped you understand the process a little bit better. But if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out. Thank you guys so much for joining me, and have a great day.